Yeah, so there we go. We're back.
Cool, man. Like I said, it's funny. I was just saying, it's been a weird day technically. I would love to say this never happens to me, but it does happen all the time. So
That's what post editing.
we'll fix it in post.
Fix it in post.
Cool.
Yeah. So now I'm in Austin, Texas, and we moved after we sold the business. Moved out here, eat lots of barbecue, drink lots of whiskey, hence my Twitch name. But yeah, it's been pretty cool now, transitioning from my early days as a fan side and then working somewhat in a studio and then helping lots of studios and now teaching the next generation of developers and managers and leaders how they can run better studios and operate more efficiently. It's come full circle, and it's a really rewarding career now because I get to help people not have to go through all of the hell and brimstone to some degree that we all had to go through. And games has gotten so competitive now. It's such a cutthroat industry. There's not a lot of wiggle room with your burn rates to experiment too much while you're trying to get that initial VP profitable.
But so Greg, how do you feel about that? Right? Because on one hand, I'm amped that there's a lot better like data available. On the other hand, it's oh man, every like analogy I have is just so inappropriate. Like it's that you move to San Fernando Valley thinking you're going to be in a romance movie, and you realize, all right, a lot of times it's just porn, and porn, it's not even the fun you think porn's going to be. It's just very much like, all right, you have 53 seconds, do this, this, this. All right, cool. Here's a wet wipe and go. Right, like it's so. I've been fortunate enough to work at companies still where the people are very passionate about what they're doing. They're very driven by mission. The last company I was at was very mission driven. We made a online horse adventure game for girls, right? And it was about 130 people there, 65% of them women. A lot of them had come up because they either had horses, had daughters that had horses, played the original games that it was based on, had daughters that played the games, and so there's a lot of passion there, and it was then it was a matter of like, okay, but how do you become more data informed or data driven even, and sort of merge that passion? And I'm curious, what are you seeing with other companies where it's like, to me it feels like there's a lot of companies that are just like data first or data only, and there's no romance there, and then you've got a lot of indies and stuff that are like pure romance, maybe data, and they're also you can get 1,500 of them for $5 on a Humble Bundle.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that there is a gamut of how games are made. Now, bearing in mind that teaching people how to use data is only like one subject of the 75 subjects that we teach now at IEP. It's we're also teaching people what does marketing do and how do you use marketing effectively, or what does IT do and why does it matter that you have version control, right? These sorts of things. But from the data perspective, there are definitely companies that I think have gone very, very data driven, and part of that you have to remember is if I ask you, like let's pretend I don't have data and all I have is survey. And we'll just ignore for a moment the fact that a lot of surveys that we do, we don't even know if the person answering the question is really that age, that gender, whatever,
right?
Because, you can't prove anything. It's just whatever radio buttons they clicked when they filled out the survey. So assuming that I was actually talking in person to players. We'll pretend I'm at a panel at a fanfare, right? And I'm sitting down with players. I know they're players, and I'm asking them questions. If I was to say to them, so what do you think I should do to make your class better? And they're going to list off a bunch of things. But that data is obviously it's complicated, right? There's a subject matter expert, so points for that. But they're subjectively motivated. And so game balance wise, I have to take that into account as I'm trying to make decisions. The they're not professional game designers. So even though they might think it might be more fun to do something, what they might be just saying is it's easier. And easier doesn't always mean fun. I think part of the fun of EverQuest was how hard, challenging at times
Right.
EverQuest was, and that it forced us to have a community, right, to play. And so I think that when we talk about data, and when I try to explain to people how to use data responsibly, it's to pretend that data is one voice of many at the conversation, right? And it has its own set of pros and cons that should be used based upon the topic and stuff that you're deciding. So for example, when is use of data? A good use of data would be that we noticed that when we went to a certain level, 50% of players were quitting after we added a new boss monster. And maybe we didn't know that it was like when players got to that monster that they were quitting until we had the data. Like normally we just saw the churn report 2 weeks later. We didn't realize it was that one monster, because the only visibility we had otherwise was a forum where people were bitching and complaining, and taking the vocal minority into account, we just weren't sure really them or not, right? So that's where data is really helpful, because it helps us identify things that are happening that we can really make tactical decisions to. Where data gets harder is when I'm trying to predict the future, and I'm trying to say, well, what if I build this, will it be better? And that's where nowadays we do more A/B testing type solutions, where we 2 features and see which one tends to work better in certain circumstances or not. But I think it's there's only a couple of companies that I know of who truly are like, we start with the data and then we figure out how to make the data fun, as opposed to we have ideas on how to make it fun. How can the data help us to make it fun and profitable for our company at the same time? And that's because I think that's what people forget. I mean, we produce commercial art. We don't produce philanthropic art. People have to make money, or we don't have jobs. We don't make games. So we have to try and find ways to bring data in so we can make financially sound design choices.
Right. Exactly. So we have a question just came in from Frank the Bank. Do you follow the TLPs on EQ now? What do you think about them? So that's what I'm sitting on right now. As a matter of fact, the Aerodune server just came up 3 weeks ago, roughly 3 weeks ago, a little over 3 weeks ago. Have you been following these, or?
You know, I saw Project 99 when it was first floating around, and some of the original progressions. You know, my brother still plays a lot, so he and I think Tom Blair was playing on one too at one point. He's busy building his game too, but I never, me is kind of a chapter of my life which was fantastic, but it's something that I've kind of closed. And part of the reason for that was that, you know, it was a magical time. It was like when you go and had that date and you with someone, and you had an amazing meal, and the sunset was perfect, and then the next time you're in the area, like, we want to go back there, and then, you know, it's horrible. And it's not to say that it would be that for me. I think there's a lot of people who love going that, but for me, it's like I have such great memories and experiences. I got everything out of EverQuest that I needed to get out of it. Now for new and different experiences in that respect. I was very saddened, obviously, to hear about Brad McQuaid's passing. I think Pantheon's, you know, got some potential, you know, to be something that could be fun to take a crack at. Right now, I'm playing Albion, as it's pretty light touch. It's not run around and gank people. You lose all your stuff. You load up again, go gank people again. It's very like UO. So it's not a game that you have to take too seriously, although it's pretty grindy in terms of leveling up. But yeah, I haven't been playing too much on the progression service.
Yeah, I really hadn't heard about them prior to us. I was playing a lot of Tarkov and was like, man, this game's brutal, and I love it because it's just brutal. And so that got me thinking about EQ again. And it seems like once every 6 months, I would come watch some streamers stream EQ. And so when this last sort of Tarkov moment happened, I was like, I'm going to watch some more EQ. and was watching a streamer and started chatting with him, and he was like, "Hey, there's a TLP coming up," and explained to me what it was, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." And it's coming out in like a week. And so I talked to my girlfriend and was like, "Hey, would you be interested in like trying EverQuest if we started new characters on this TLP server?" And surprisingly, she was actually down. And so I came back, and the last few times I've tried to get on my original tune, it was so sad. I would log in, I'd be like, Freeport would be empty. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. There's 20 new windows, and I was like, screw this, and log out. The TLP experience has been so much damn fun. And it's been fun exploring it with her. But honestly, like, I've just kind of gotten back in because I haven't found a modern MMO that provides me with this degree of grind and, like the loot window. That interface is just it's a mystery. So it took me 4 days to figure out how to work the loot window, but afterwards I felt like I'd accomplished something in life, right? So
Well, that was one of the early, we talked about the dude bugs. That was one of the earliest dude bugs that we were aware of, was if you were looting a body and you pulled something off the body and you left it on your cursor and you unplugged your Ethernet cable, when you came back and you logged back in, the item was still on your mouse, but it was back on the body. And you could just rinse and repeat that, all day long. There's all sorts of bugs like that that they fix these days. These were all network latency and safe state bugs that have been fixed even in the TLPs. That stuff's fixed. But even the TLPs aren't perfect. Like they still run as if Clarity. We talked about it. That Clarity was an original spell that was available from day one, but it didn't actually come out until months after. Probably like 4 months after launch. And so it is interesting, how people look back on it. But I think it's great that people are finding ways to reconnect with a game that's 20 years old. And there's something about the maturity of that game. Even though you're starting with the TLP and you're having to work your way back up through the original grind and the meditation screen and all that kind of stuff. I think that's cool. And now you've got voice chat. So now it can be so much more social than it used to be, right? I mean, we used to basically just sit there with spell books in front of our faces, typing to people. We didn't, eventually we used to set up like TeamSpeak servers, right?
no.
TeamSpeak going on, but
I don't talk to any of these weirdos. No. We'll just keep it in text, guys. No. You're all very strange. But yeah, I guess in theory it could be more social. But
yeah, I think that it's one of those things where I don't think there's any game world as big as what EverQuest game world is. I mean, I don't even know the size of it and the depth of it and the amount of content that's there on it. But I mean, you play it for every day for a few years and not get to every part of every zone. It's just a massive world. I mean, huge kudos to the team and what they've achieved there. I mean, it's really cool. And I think that one of the things that's actually been great about the sort of